February marks LGBT Month, a month-long annual observance of lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender history. Usually you see the streets of Leicestershire being lined with rainbow flags and big parades, but this year things have moved online. Well, the church likes to think of itself as an inclusive place, but is it still lagging behind when it comes to gay and trans issues? Well, Mathew Hulbert is a Christian from Leicestershire and he came out to his family around 10 years ago, and he joins me on the programme with some of his thoughts. Morning to you, Mathew.
Hi there, Rupal.
When we talk about coming out, you were a young teenager, were you?
No, so I came out to my family all on the same day on my birthday 10 years ago when I was 31, and I turned 41 in a couple of weeks' time.
Why do you think it took so long for you to come out?
I think it's because, and I think most LGBT plus folks will tell you this, that it's the fear of the unknown, and it's the worry that your family may not accept you for who you are. Now, thankfully, all of mine did, and they couldn't have been more supportive. But that, I'm afraid, is not always the case. And, we still have examples where young people, teenagers indeed, are chucked out of the family home because they come out to their parents.
What about when it comes to faith? How did that impact on how you felt about being gay?
Well, I felt for a while, and I now fully believe that I was absolutely wrong in thinking this, but I felt for a while that you couldn't be both Christian and gay, LGBT plus. I now think that I was wrong in thinking that. I turned away from the church for a while. I think my reasons for that were understandable, given what some in the church still have to say on these matters today. But there are many more inclusive churches, including the one that I go to, St Mary's in Hinckley.
Have you always felt accepted then by the church?
I've always felt accepted by that church, but have I had experiences in the past where people have been less than accepting? Absolutely. And actually, I feel that doesn't represent what I believe in. I just think of the example of Jesus, who stood with the weak, who stood with the oppressed, who stood with the marginalised. And I personally have no doubt at all that were he still walking among us today, he would stand with LGBT plus people.
What changes have you seen in attitudes in the last decade, Mathew?
I think it's been amazing in many respects, and I think we've certainly seen legislation change. So as and when I stop being a lonely single and meet a guy that I fall in love with, I can now marry that person, and I think that is fantastic. But sometimes hearts and minds take a wee while longer to be won around than legislation. And whilst I think the majority of people think, it's your own business, it's nothing to do with me, there are those, of course, and there probably always will be a minority of people who feel whatever they feel. And I'm not even going to repeat some of the stuff that gets said, but ultimately, all we can do is live our lives and try and hope that people will be accepting. But I must say, Rupal, I think the front line in the fight for LGBT plus rights today is for full recognition and justice and equality for trans and non-binary people. And sadly, 20 odd years on, we're seeing what used to be said about gay people being said about trans people. And I think that's a great shame.
What more can be done then? And how do you tackle that?
I think you have to, I always say, if it's safe to do so, always tackle prejudice, always call it out if you're able to and if you feel safe to be able to do so. Because actually, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, none of these things are acceptable. And I think much of the public debate today, certainly over trans and non-binary issues, has become just so kind of poisonous, and I don't understand it. These are people who are trying to be the truest expression of themselves, who already are having to go through all of the stuff that they're having to go through, and yet people feel that it's okay, whether online or in person or on the media, to speak about them in the most derogatory way. So I just think it's appalling.
Mathew, thank you for joining me on the programme. Mathew Hulbert, who's a Christian from here in Leicestershire.